Hello, welcome pen friends. We are now looking at number 6 ink in the Viewer's Choice 3 series. It is Diamine Maureen, and it's a real red sheening ink. I mean, it's a blue ink, but it's pretty much taken over at times with the red sheen. Now, this ink, like I said, it's number 6, and it got 8 votes. So we're moving right along with this series. We've just got 2 more after this. Let's put it right into the bath test and see what happens. Whoa, look at that. That is very bright that comes out. Ooh, and a lot of it too. Okay. Of course, that was with the broad nib. But let's find out by just putting it aside for now what happens in the long run. Okay, and we're in the new Rhodia Gold book ink journal. Only the second ink review to go into here. Okay, so here we are. Now, this little piece here is Tomoya River paper, and it did get quite a bit of nice red sheen on that swatch. And then I put it in the broad nib and the Serendipity. Now, this ink is available at Cult Pens, and it's $9.50, I think is the way it said. Okay, so I'll link you to their site. I really didn't go much further. I couldn't seem to find it easily here in the United States, but I imagine there are ways to get a hold of it. So that's one place, and I'll just have to continue to learn. It isn't an ink that I'm going to order, so to be honest, I just kind of halted it at there. It was funny because I thought I could get that through Amazon, but I was having trouble finding it, so I thought I could find a link through there. But it's a bold ink, and on some of the papers the red takes over, and on some it doesn't. On here it was pretty straightforward. It had some red tinting and a little shading that you could see, but the red wasn't as big a factor on the Rhodia paper. So, but we'll see some where it was. And it also dried faster on this paper than... Oh, okay, my hypothesis was it would take longer, and it didn't. It basically, at 8 seconds it was dry, and at 5 seconds it still smeared. I was going backwards from what I usually do. So, my first impressions are that it's pretty. It's very dark, and it has tons of red sheen. And I wrote down I'd use it in some circumstances in a fine or extra fine nib. And it reminds me of Skull and Roses. Right away it reminded me of that ink. This is the chromatography. It was very straightforward, and that surprised me. I expected something really crazy since the ink is so spectacular. I mean, see what it does on Tomoya River paper. And thank you to pen friend MW for sending the sample some time ago. I'm just getting around to these samples I've had for so long. Now, that ink did not, do much. It maybe showed through. It had a heavy shadowing in places, but it was pretty well behaved on this paper. So, okay, next we've got a few more notebooks. We've got the CVS Caliber 4x6 notebook. And that, whoops, here we are. Okay, on this paper, the red just took over. Look at that. But that's interesting. It didn't even do quite that much on the Tomoya River paper. And in the beginning of the writing there, you can kind of see more red than blue. Kind of settled down, I guess, after a while. But even in the little scribbles, you can see quite a bit of red. Took a long time to dry on this paper, though. It was over 20 seconds. I just stopped trying there. It's somewhere up above that. Not too far in the broad nib, anyway. And then in the fine nib, it still could be red because it is so dark. I didn't really like the experience of it in the fine nib on this paper. And it took 20 seconds to dry. At 15, it was almost dry in the fine nib, but not quite. So let's see. Oh, and it didn't bleed through. It like heavily ghosted in the painted on part, but other than that, it was just fine. Okay, and then in the Leuchtturm pocket size 1917 notebook, here we have it. Now in here, it looks different. It becomes more of a blue ink, but I see some tinting around the letters on the top there, and then it looks pretty normal on here. You can still see a little bit of red, but if you were looking, if this is your paper, let's say this is your main paper and you love extreme red sheen, then this might not be, I don't know, because it just sort of, it becomes like a really nice dark navy blue ink on this paper. And it actually reminded me of a Diamine Oxford Blue on this paper. So, and it was quick to dry, 10 seconds. Really in both nibs, probably was somewhere between 5 and 10 in the fine nib, but by 10 seconds it was dry. So it didn't show off its main characteristics as much on the Leuchtturm paper. And then on Clairfontaine, here we go. I'm going to fold that just so you can see today's. Got a lot of red sheening on there, and even in the lettering, you could see a lot of red. In fact, with the camera and the lights and everything, you know, it's turning it really dark, but to the eye, I'm seeing lots of red there. Just spectacular, but oh, it just like to take forever to dry on this paper. It was more than 30 seconds. I just was like, no, I would get my trusty blotter paper out, because there's no way that I probably wouldn't be able to wait that long. You know, when I'm writing pen pal letters, I do typically write front and back if it's good paper. So here's the fine nib, and same thing with the fine nib, really, you see a little red tinting, and it's not quite as dramatic maybe as the next papers, but it was really something. And 25 seconds to dry in the fine nib. Let's see how it did. I'm sure it didn't, no, it didn't go through that at all. That Clairfontaine paper is very hardy. Okay, so now we're moving into 3 samples on Tomoya River paper. I need to remember the last one. Last time I forgot. So here is the little Birmingham. This is 52 GSM Tomoya River paper. And it's a sheen monster on here. It's really got a lot of red sheen in the letters, and I'm hoping you can see that, but in the letters and in the swatch. So that was really something, particularly in the broader nib. It's funny here. Oh no, okay, if you tilt it just right, you could see the red sheen in the little scribbles, true. Yeah, and more than 30 seconds. So again, I would have my blotter paper ready, or I would be ready to just let it sit for quite a while. In fact, I probably wouldn't trust it. I'd still blot it. And then in the fine nib, whoops, I forgot to put F, but this is everything from there down is the fine nib. Didn't get as much red sheening, but you could see the tinting to your regular eye. I'm not sure about through the camera. And 25 seconds, well, almost. It was almost dry at 25 seconds. Okay, let's see how it did on the other reverse side. Okay, it just seeped through on the painted on portion. Let's keep this one around. Okay, so now on 68 GSM Tomoya River paper, this is from Pen Gallery, Live Notes by Pen Gallery. This is a cool little notebook. Here it is. We got quite a bit of red sheening here too. In the swatch, maybe not quite as much. Yeah, it was more dramatic on the 52 GSM paper. And then, but quite a bit of red sheen or highlight on the letters too, on the written portion in the broad nib. Okay, and more than 30 seconds to dry, so that was something to note. And the fine nib, it kind of became more of a dark blue ink, and it just sort of lost some of its you know, highlights. You're not seeing as much of the red down here in the Lamy fine nib. Just becomes a nice blue, dark blue. But let's turn that over. Well, okay, I guess that's thicker than I expect it to be. Okay, so just a little bit of ghosting, but no seepage, no bleed through or anything. So that's really super. Okay, now for the final Tomoya River sample, it's the Cafe Notes by Nanami Paper Company. And I wanted you to see this because it just was spectacular on this paper. Oh, it's like half blue, half red. It's like a red and blue zebra on this paper. It was just amazing, in the broad nib, that is. And it got a little bit more subtle in the fine nib. So all of this is written with the Yowo broad nib. And it's just amazing. I wish you could see it exactly as precise as I can, but it's just a red sheen monster. But it still made like half of that W looks blue and the other half looks red. You know, the top of the S, the top of the J, it's just amazing. Top of the E. It's like I couldn't do that if I tried, you know, like with two separate pens, I couldn't get it to come out that way. So this is just my journal on my intermittent fasting and health. And then I dropped down into, talked about the weather here in the broad fine nib. We have had ridiculous weather. It continues today, and mercy sakes, hot, high heat indexes. But this, it doesn't look as much like a zebra. It's got tinted red though, and the red almost takes over. Actually, I would say in the fine nib on this Nanami Cafe Note, the red is more prevalent than the blue. Again, difficult to show, but it's there. Okay, so now let's check in on our little experiment. Wow, okay, this is just nuts. I would have actually expected, just, you know, just out of a guess, that I'd be able to read this, but it's almost all gone now, and we're not quite complete the experiment. At the end of videoing, as soon as I clean up, I take them out, so they have a very consistent timing, but you can't really read that anymore. That's amazing. Okay, let's look at our comparison panel because, wow, we've got quite a few here. To get it semi-straight at least. I want you to be able to see the names of the inks. There we go. Okay, so right in the middle is today's ink, Diamine Maureen, Occult Pens exclusive limited edition, I think is what that's what I read. So it's dramatic. I mean, even where you put the water, and I should have known, okay, I could see that it's pretty much taking it. It certainly moves it real quick, and then you have those dark, dramatic red and blue highlights. But I put right next to it Organic Studio Nitrogen, an ink that I'm afraid of, but maybe I'll be able to get over that. But I have a little sample of it, but I'm kind of afraid to put it in my pen after other experiences with other inks. But it's reminiscent of that, and yet you could see kind of the red sheen takes over so much on this one. And it does of course, come into play on the Organic Studio Nitrogen. Just, it acted a little bit differently, but I'd have to do it more than once to have that be real science. And then these two just blow, you know, Diamine Skull and Roses, it's a dark ink with a lot of red sheen too, a lot, but they're all kind of like contenders. You know, they're peers, I would say. And then I really couldn't find anything else that was really similar, so I just put some of my darker blues on the panel. And Diamine Oxford Blue, at times, I mentioned it, you know, earlier, at times the ink ended up looking like that, which surprised me. You know, I mean, that's a dark kind of navy ink, a very nice, and it does show off just a little bit of red sheen in the painted on part. So maybe that's why it had that reminiscence. I'm not sure. Okay, I got to get this so you can still read the ink names. And then, you know, it just was tough. I did pull out a Diamine 150th anniversary Regency Blue, but I don't think it really compares because I see that there's more purple component in that ink. And then another dark navy. I mean, I was just pulling at straws, really. I don't have very many that are in this ballpark. The J. Arbonne Blue, can't say that. I have actually reviewed this one, I believe. And that one didn't move around as much. And it was, you know, it's kind of a navy blue, but in a different, it's not as bright. Diamine Maureen is much brighter. And then down here we have a really bright Krishna Moon View. It reminds me of Maureen because even though it's brighter blue, it also has tons of red sheen. And if I remember right from when I played around with that one and reviewed it, it was really, really red sheeny. So, and then we got two that are just here for, I guess, to have something here. Diamine Blue Pearl is a, you know, it's one of, if you like shimmer, there you go. There's a dark one that kind of reminded me of Oxford Blue and Maureen somewhat, only because of the underlying blue. And then if we go lighter, over here, Krishna Winalum is much lighter, but it has edging and red kind of highlights. So this was just really a challenge, this panel, but here we go. I mean, at least we've got two that are right in that ballpark. And you may be familiar with something on here that can help you kind of place where Diamine Maureen falls. It's just really saturated as far as I could tell. That may not be the proper word. It's dark. It's startlingly dark for the fact that it just disappears when you put water on it. But let's look at the visual journal. It was not all that well behaved on here in terms of, it didn't let me keep my little details like the one up above, you know, Diamine Steel Blue. It allowed some detail to stay in. Well, this one just wanted to continue to process it, you know, kind of the way it did in here. So, you know, I'm still learning. I have a lot to learn. So these are just my experiments. But here we got a lot of red sheen, which is difficult to show right now. But here too, it kind of reddened and got real dramatic. But it just wasn't, you know, as satisfying as being able to end up with a few little details that gave it a picture quality. That's the Nick Stewart technique applied by a new person to it. Okay, so let's just put this back down here, and I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about this ink. It seems as though, and I haven't cleaned it out of my pens yet, so I'll have to give you an after action report. I had to keep it in because I kept thinking of other places I wanted to test and things I wanted to write in. But it looks as if it'll clean out of the pens really well, according to the water test and the way it behaved on the other part. But I will let you know. And what's up next is a total departure from blue. We're going to Diamine Tyrian Purple. And this looks really neat. It almost looks... I mean, when I look at this, I don't think of purple, but hey, we're going to have fun with it and test it and try it on a lot of papers, and I hope you'll join me for that one too. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye for now.